The smell of sickness was heavy in the small, draughty room. It smelled of boiled cabbage, damp wool, and the metallic tang of blood. Arthur sat on the three-legged stool by the bed, holding his mother's hand. Her hand was rough, calloused from 40 years of scrubbing other people's floors. Her breath rattled in her chest like dry leaves. Martha was dying. Arthur was 20. He was a giant of a man, with shoulders broad enough to carry a grain sack in each arm, and hands that were scarred from his work at the blacksmith's forge. He was the protector of the alley, the man you came to when the landlord threatened to break your legs. He was rough, uneducated, and fiercely loyal to the woman dying in the bed. "Mama," Arthur whispered, his voice thick with unshed tears, "don't try to speak. Save your strength." Martha opened her eyes. They were milky with cataracts, but for a moment they sharpened. She squeezed his hand with surprising strength. "I cannot be silent," she rasped. "The devil is waiting for me. I must confess." Arthur frowned. "Confess?" "Mamma, you are a saint. You have fed half the street when we had nothing." "I am a thief, Arthur," she hissed. "The greatest thief in England." She coughed, a terrible wet sound that shook her frail body. She pointed to the loose floorboard under the window. "The box," she wheezed. "Get the box." Arthur hesitated, then stood up. He walked to the window. He pried up the loose board with his knife. Underneath, wrapped in an oilcloth, was a small wooden box. It was heavy, expensive wood, inlaid with mother of pearl, completely out of place in their hovel. He brought it to her. "Open it," she commanded. Arthur flipped the latch. Inside, resting on velvet that had rotted with age, lay two things: a letter sealed with red wax, and a rattle. But it wasn't a wooden rattle. It was solid gold, and on the end, encrusted in rubies, was the crest of a roaring lion. Arthur stared at it. The gold seemed to glow in the dim light. "What is this?" he asked. "Did you steal this from the big house?" Martha worked as a laundress at the ducal palace on the hill. Arthur assumed she had pilfered it years ago. "I stole." "Everything," Martha whispered. She looked at him. Tears leaked from her eyes. 20 years ago. The old Duchess died in childbirth. The baby, the little lord. He was sickly. He wouldn't eat. The physician said he would not last the night. She took a ragged breath. "My baby, my Thomas. He was born the same night, in the servants' quarters. He was strong. He screamed like a bull." Arthur felt a chill that had nothing to do with the draught. "The Duke! The old Duke! He was mad with grief," Martha continued. "He said if his heir died, he would burn the castle down. He was a cruel man. I was afraid. I was the wet nurse. I was holding both babies." She gripped Arthur's hand so hard her nails dug in. "The little lord died, Arthur, in my arms. He just stopped breathing. And," Arthur whispered, "and I swapped them." The silence in the room was deafening. A rat skittered in the corner. "I put the dead baby, the real Duke, in my crib," Martha sobbed, "and I put my son, my Thomas, in the royal cradle." Arthur stared at her. He looked at the gold rattle. He looked at his own rough hands. "So," he said slowly, "the man in the castle, the Duke, Lord Valerius, he is my son," Martha wept. "He is Thomas. He is a pauper born in straw." "And I?" Arthur asked. The question felt like it belonged to someone else. Martha looked at him with an expression of agony and love. "You are Lord Arthur Pendleton," she whispered. "You are the Duke of Highgarden." Arthur stood up. He backed away from the bed. He felt sick. "No," he said. "No, that is a lie." "It is the truth," Martha cried. "That letter, It is the physician's report. I stole it. It proves the heir died. It proves the swap." "Why?" Arthur shouted. "Why tell me this now?" "Because look at him," Martha wailed. "Look at Valerius. He is a monster. He taxes the poor until they starve. He beats his servants. He is wicked, Arthur, because he has my blood. He has the blood of a drunkard father and a weak mother." She reached out to him. "But you are noble. You protected the street. You saved the widow when her roof collapsed. You have the heart of a king, Arthur. Because you are one. You must take it back. You must save them from my son." Arthur looked at the woman he had loved as a mother. He saw the guilt eating her alive. She had stolen his life. She had condemned him to poverty, to hunger, to the forge, so that her own flesh and blood could sleep in silk. He should hate her. He should rage. But he looked at her dying face. He remembered how she had starved herself to feed him during the famine. He remembered how she had sung to him when he burned with fever. She had stolen his title, but she had given him a mother. Arthur closed the box. He put the gold rattle in his pocket. "Sleep, Mamma," he said softly. "We will talk in the morning." But there was no morning for Martha. She died an hour later, her hand in his, begging for a forgiveness he wasn't sure he could give. Arthur buried her in the pauper's grave at the edge of the city. He stood alone in the rain, the wooden box heavy under his arm. He looked up at the hill. The castle of Highgarden loomed over the city, a fortress of grey stone and golden lights. Inside that castle sat Valerius, the false duke. Arthur had seen him once. Valerius had ridden through the market, his carriage wheel splashing mud onto the peasants. He was a thin, pale man with a sneer permanently etched onto his face. He wore velvet that cost more than Arthur would earn in a lifetime. Arthur hated him. He hated him, not because he had his title, but because he was a bad man. Arthur walked back to his forge. He threw the wooden box onto his workbench. "I don't want it," he told the empty room. He didn't want to be a duke. He didn't want to wear silk and bow to a king. He liked the smell of iron. He liked the heat of the fire. He liked his friends, Big John the baker and Mary the seamstress. He decided to burn the letter. He would sell the rattle, buy a better tombstone for Martha, and forget the whole madness. He reached for the letter. Suddenly, the door to the forge burst open. Arthur spun around, grabbing a hammer. It wasn't a customer. It was Big John. He was bleeding from a cut on his forehead. "Arthur!" John gasped, collapsing against the anvil. "You have to come." "What happened?" Arthur asked, catching him. "The soldiers," John wheezed. "The Duke's men. They are clearing the street, clearing it." "Valerius wants to build a new hunting park," John said. "He is burning the houses. He is burning the alley, Arthur. Mary is still inside." Arthur dropped the hammer. A cold white rage flooded his veins. It was a rage he had never felt before. It wasn't the anger of a blacksmith. It was the wrath of a lord whose land was being violated. "Stay here," Arthur commanded. He grabbed a sword he had just finished sharpening. It was a heavy, bastard sword meant for a knight. It fit his hand perfectly. He ran. He ran through the twisting streets of the slums. He saw the smoke before he saw the fire. Thick, black smoke billowing into the sky. He turned the corner onto Ragged Row. It was chaos. Soldiers in the Duke's livery, red and gold, were torching the thatched roofs. Women were screaming. Men were being beaten back with the flats of swords. Arthur saw Mary. She was being dragged out of her shop by two soldiers. They were laughing. "Let her go," Arthur roared. The soldiers turned. They saw a blacksmith in a leather apron, holding a sword like he was born to it. They laughed harder. "Go back to your forge, Soot boy," the captain sneered. "This is ducal land. It is people's land," Arthur shouted. He charged. He didn't fight like a peasant. He fought with a terrifying instinctual grace. He parried the captain's thrust, stepped inside his guard, and knocked him unconscious with the pommel of his sword. The other soldiers swarmed him. There were 6 of them. Arthur fought them all. He was a whirlwind of steel and muscle. He didn't kill them. He was not a murderer. But he broke arms, shattered ribs, and sent them fleeing into the smoke. He stood amidst the burning houses, chest heaving. The people of the alley crept out from the shadows. They looked at him with awe. Arthur helped Mary to her feet. "Are you hurt?" he asked gently. "No," she whispered, staring at him. "Arthur, you moved like a demon. Where did you learn that?" "I didn't," Arthur muttered. He looked up at the castle on the hill. The fire from the slums was reflecting in the windows of the palace. Valerius was probably watching, probably sipping wine and enjoying the bonfire. Arthur realised then that he couldn't burn the letter. He couldn't walk away, because a duke's duty wasn't to wear silk, it was to protect his people. And Valerius wasn't protecting them, he was hunting them. Arthur turned to the crowd. "Put out the fires," he ordered. "Gather the wounded in the church." "Where are you going?" John asked, limping up. "I'm going to have a word with the landlord," Arthur said grimly. He went back to the forge. He washed the soot from his face. He put on his best shirt, a rough linen tunic. He took the wooden box. He put the gold rattle in one pocket and the letter in the other. He didn't take the sword. He wouldn't need it. He walked up the hill. The gates of Highgarden were guarded by 2 sentries. "Halt!" one shouted. "No tradesman!" "I am not a tradesman," Arthur said. "I am a claimant." He didn't wait for permission. He walked past them. The sentry grabbed his arm. Arthur didn't strike him. He simply looked at him. He turned his head and fixed the man with a stare of such absolute icy authority that the sentry instinctively let go. It was the stare of the Pendleton line, the stare that had ruled this valley for 500 years. Arthur walked through the courtyard. He walked through the great oak doors. He walked past the stunned footman. He found Valerius in the great hall. The false duke was sitting at a banquet table, surrounded by sycophants. He was eating a roasted swan. He looked bored. "Who let this filth in?" Valerius demanded, wiping grease from his chin. Arthur walked the length of the hall. His boots echoed on the marble. He stopped at the foot of the dais. "Lord Valerius," Arthur said. His voice echoed, filling the cavernous space. Valerius sneered. "Do I know you, peasant? You know my mother," Arthur said. "Martha, the laundress." Valerius rolled his eyes. "Ah, the old hag who died. Did she send you for a handout? Give him a coin and throw him out." "She didn't send me for a coin," Arthur said. "She sent me to return something." He reached into his pocket. He pulled out the gold rattle. He threw it. It clattered onto the table, knocking over a goblet of wine. The red wine spread across the white tablecloth like blood. Valerius stared at the rattle. He recognised it. It was the lost heirloom, the rattle that had vanished the night of his birth. "Where did you get this?" Valerius hissed. "You stole it. It was in my cradle," Arthur said, "just as you were in mine." The room went silent. The guests exchanged confused glances. "What are you babbling about?" Valerius stood up. "I am saying," Arthur announced, raising his voice, "that 20 years ago 2 babies were born, one to a duchess, one to a washerwoman. The duchess's baby was swapped." He pointed a calloused finger at Valerius. "You are Thomas, son of Martha, and you are sitting in my chair." Valerius's face turned purple. "This is treason," he screamed. "Guards, kill him! Cut out his tongue!" 4 guards rushed forward. "Hold!" A voice boomed. It was the High Steward, Lord Corvis, an old man who had served the Pendleton family for 50 years. He stepped out of the shadows. He looked at the rattle. Then he looked at Arthur. He walked up to Arthur. He peered into his face. He looked at the square jaw, the grey eyes, the peculiar way Arthur's hair curled at the temple. Then he looked at Valerius, thin, sallow, with weak chin and watery eyes. Lord Corvis looked back at Arthur. "You have the look," Corvis whispered. "You have the old Duke's brow." "He is a blacksmith," Valerius shrieked. "He is a nobody." Arthur pulled out the letter. "This is the confession," Arthur said, handing it to Corvis, written by the physician, witnessed by Martha. Corvis read the letter. His hands shook. "It is true," Corvis murmured. "The seal is authentic." He looked at Valerius. "My lord, Thomas, you must step down." Valerius looked around the room. He saw the doubt in the eyes of his guests. He saw the guards hesitating. "No." Valerius grabbed a knife from the table. "I am the Duke. I have been the Duke for 20 years. He lunged at Arthur. It was a clumsy, desperate attack. Arthur didn't even draw a weapon. He caught Valerius's wrist. He twisted it. The knife clattered to the floor. Arthur shoved him back. Valerius fell into his chair, panting, pathetic. "You are not a duke," Arthur said softly. "You never were. A duke protects his people. You burn their homes. A duke leads. You tyrannize." Arthur looked at the guests. "I did not come here for the title," he said. "I do not want your silk. I do not want your gold. I stayed in the forge because I was happy." He looked at Valerius. "But you hurt my friends. You burned my street. You proved that you are unworthy of the power you stole." He turned to Corvis. "I claim my birthright, not for the glory, but for the duty." Valerius was weeping now. But I don't know how to be poor. I can't work. I have never worked a day in my life." Arthur looked at the brother he had never known, the man who had lived his life. "I know," Arthur said, "and that is your punishment." He signalled to the guards. "Escort him to the gates, give him a set of work clothes, and tell him the blacksmith in the lower city is looking for an apprentice." Valerius gasped. You would make me a smith?" Arthur smiled. "It's honest work, Thomas. It will make a man of you yet." Valerius was dragged out, wailing. Arthur stood alone in the centre of the hall. Lord Corvis bowed. "Your Grace," Corvis said. "Your orders?" Arthur looked at the stained tablecloth. He looked at the frightened guests. He felt the weight of the title settling on his shoulders. It was heavier than any hammer he had ever lifted. "Open the gates," Arthur said. "Let the people in, all of them. But your Grace, the banquet." "The banquet is for them," Arthur said. "The people of Ragged Row. They have lost their homes today. Tonight they sleep in the castle. And that is how the reign of King Arthur of the Gutter began. He was a strange duke. He refused to wear velvet. He kept his leather apron. He spent his mornings in the council room and his afternoons in the forge, repairing the tools of his tenants. He never rebuilt the slums. He built stone cottages. He built schools. He built a hospital and named it the Martha. And Thomas was a terrible blacksmith. He burned his hands. He complained. He cried. But Arthur didn't fire him. He visited him every week. He taught him how to hold the hammer. He taught him that respect is earned, not inherited. It took 10 years, but one day Thomas made a horseshoe that didn't break. He held it up, sweating, dirty, smiling a real smile for the first time in his life. Arthur slapped him on the back. "Not bad, Thomas," the Duke said. "Not bad at all. It's a story that asks the ultimate question. What makes a noble? Is it the DNA or is it the struggle?" Valerius had the blood of a pauper but was raised a prince, and he became a monster. Arthur had the blood of a prince but was raised a pauper, and he became a hero. It seems that character isn't born, it's forged. Arthur didn't want the throne. He took it because he had to. That is the definition of a true leader. The ones who crave power are the ones who shouldn't have it. The ones who run from it are the ones who should rule. If you would vote for a Blacksmith King over a velvet tyrant, hammer that like button. Let's forge a community of rebels. And if you want to hear more stories about the hidden royalty among us, subscribe. You never know. You might be the lost heir to a kingdom yourself. Until next time, check your floorboards.